Ladies and gentlemen, my friend, Nicholas Anderson.
Thank you. Joe, I do have some slides. Do you want me to show
Have at
them? Do you
it.
want me to embargo?
Do your thing. Who am I to tell Nick how to Nick?
No, thank you. Um, yeah, it's good to see everybody. And I did attend last week, but for some reason I wasn't on in the group. So I could hear what everyone was saying, but I wasn't able to participate. But um, so yeah, just for those of you, for Yuri and Omer, I live in Utah. I started my career as a payer, determining what would get reimbursed for a hospital system here, for an insurance company and hospital system that are integrated. At least they're supposed to be. Um, don't ever fall for the integrated delivery network talk track. Um, that the hospital and the insurance company work together. They don't. That they're owned by the same entity, but they're separate. And and then I started a biotech company with some friends, and then I work full time for a medical device company, um, and then do some consulting and things like that on the side, all in reimbursement and market access. So I'm a health economist, but my focus is on this. My focus isn't on public health or, should the city of San Francisco do this or that. I don't do public health things. Or public policy like many health economists do. I'm really focused on reimbursement and market access for medical device companies. And on these webinars, the medical device group, I've done over the years. I've talked about coding, I've talked about coverage, I've talked about payment, different aspects of health economics and market access, or what's called HEMA. Some countries call it HERA, Health Economics and Regulatory Affairs. They put them together. Some do HEGA, Health Economics and Government Affairs. Um, I prefer HEMA, Health Economics and Market Access, but they're all elements of the same thing. But I've talked about coding and coverage and payment, the three big things. And then today, when Joe and I were talking, I said, let me kind of do a reimbursement 201. And maybe I've got these backwards. Maybe what I want to do this morning is more 101, but we'll see. Um,
It'll certainly
this
be
is
stuff that we don't know. So you're good.
no, thank you. This
And by
this
the
is
way,
an
Ori, we
element.
have I'll put in the chat the link to the 200 and some odd episodes before this one, and you can sort and look for Nick, and there must be a half dozen Nicks in there. So truly a resource. Go ahead,
Oh,
Nick.
thank you. Um, so this one this morning, the first maybe several minutes is just a recap from what I said at NYU. I was invited to speak at NYU to the Department of Interventional Radiology in September, and this is just kind of a recap of that. And it's something where you can put your pen down and just sit back and enjoy, kind of some food for thought stuff about really where did reimbursement even come from? Like, how did the reimbursement hasn't always existed? I'm talking medical reimbursement, of course. That where did this come from? How did this come about in the healthcare world? And maybe let me try sharing my screen, and we'll get into it. Um, Let me know.
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me?
Yep, and see.
Okay. Okay. Now let me just go to this so I can do. All right, it's loading. Okay. So again, these first several slides are just FYI, informational, academic, 90,000 foot altitude. What I plan on talking about at 10X in California in a couple of months is going to be much more real world, nitty gritty, not so philosophical and that type of thing. It's going to be really like, Nick, I've got a product, I got to get reimbursed. Quit it with this stuff. Like, how do I do this? I got to get paid. But let's talk, this is how I describe it. And the first time I ever presented this, I gave a speech. There were several people presenting. One of them was Robin Williams's widow, Susan. Susan came to Utah to talk about how Robin Williams was misdiagnosed with um, Parkinson's, but he actually had Lewy body dementia. And that was the first time I ever presented it this way. But I started the speech by essentially saying, just imagine two different sales reps, one who was in the mid 90s and another one today. And if I went to the one in the in the early 90s and said, talk to me about what it was like to sell a medical device in 1994, and I just picked 1994, 1990, 1989, whatever, they would say those were the glory years. I mean, it was too easy. You made a medical device, you got it FDA approved, and then you could run around and sell it. In fact, you could take physicians on trips to the Bahamas. You could pay for $200 steak dinners. It was just, you went skiing a few times and you sold some medical devices. And now there's the Sunshine Act, so you can't do these big lavish trips anymore. Um, excuse me. You can do big lavish trips in the defense world, but you can't in medicine. And you can do big lavish trips in this industry and that industry, but you can in medicine. And you can't pay more than $10 for a dinner for some physician, but you can for some general that you want to buy your defense supplies. So kind of a double standard there, and medicine gets the bad end of the deal, in my opinion. That in 1994 it was easy. In 2024 it's hard. And here's what it looks like. In 1994, you just said, hey, here's my medical device. Let me come up with a hypothetical medical device. Here's my medical device, and it does such and such. And doc, it's awesome. Here's some literature. Here's our FDA approval. What do you think? And the doctor said, great, I'll buy 20 units, and that's it. And in 2024, you've now got all of these acronyms. You've got so much has changed in this period of time. Not that none of these things on the right didn't exist back in 1994, but there were CPT codes in 1994. There were ambulatory surgical centers in 1994, but this stuff was kind of in the background in 1994 and nobody really cared, and it kind of took care of itself. Now, this is the constant question I get on this computer in a full-time job every day. Like, Nick, why is the reimbursement for this thing? Why was it $100 last year and it's 95 now? And Nick, what do you think it's going to be next year? Is it going to go back up to 100? Is it going to go down to 90? Because every time reimbursement for this thing gets cut, Dr. Smith is more reluctant to buy them from us.
I
It just
know
makes my
it will
job
be
harder.
relevant for our first timers that Nick happens to work full time for Boston Scientific. So we're talking one of the great major companies.
Yeah,
And these are the questions
thank
that
you.
they're asking too.
Yes, I get it all the time, Joe. Like on a daily basis, it's this, hey, Nick, there's this doctor and he really wants to use our device, but he's concerned that our reimbursement is only this, but our competition's reimbursement is this. How do we reconcile that? Because he's got a practice to run and he needs to make money and so on. So these things, no physicians asking about the medical economic index or the update adjustment factor or budget neutrality, but I am, and I have to interpret this and put it into English and send it out to sales reps and marketing and things so that they can preempt these questions from physicians. But long story short, it's gotten more difficult over the last 30, 40 years. So chapter 2 is about this information asymmetry. And I put this up several months ago when I was in New York. And I said, look at this painting from 1891. There's a physician, a sick child, a distraught mom and dad at their little farmhouse somewhere. And, the doctor probably knew the mom and dad. They had a relationship. They lived in the same neighborhood. They went to church together, something. They probably knew one another. I doubt this doctor lived 50 miles away in some metropolitan area. He probably lived within a few acres of the family. And it was fee for service. The doctor got a phone call or something, maybe not in 1891, got some sort of a message to come to this poor family's farmhouse. This little child is sick. The doctor shows up and says, yeah, here's what I think's wrong. and the mom and dad give the doctor a silver coin or a chicken or, a gallon of milk or something to say, thank you for coming and helping us. I'm just a poor farmer. I don't know anything about medicine. You seem to know something. And it's fee for service. The family has some sort of a fee that they can come up with, a silver coin, a chicken, something, and the physician provided a service, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's no ethical dilemma. There's no there's no inequity that the doctor says, what can you guys afford to pay? And they said, well, a gallon of milk and a chicken. And they said, all right, I'll do that. Fee for service, done. Um, Contrast that to modern medicine with these really complicated operating rooms, hospitals, all of these terms that are now part and parcel of American healthcare, and frankly, international healthcare has many of these same things. When you look at the modern healthcare world, there is now a drastic information asymmetry. So this is probably not even reimbursement 101. This is reimbursement 98. That on the left, where this physician was, he probably knew the mom and dad probably knew quite a bit of what the doctor knew. The mom and dad were farmers. They knew about infection. They knew about fevers. They knew about broken bones. If you grow up on a farm, those are things you deal with every day with livestock. A fever and an infection and how to bandage wounds and things like that is stuff you deal with on a daily basis. The information asymmetry between what the physician knew and what the patient knew was negligible. I mean, absolutely negligible. Fast forward to this picture taken in 2018, the information asymmetry is drastic. Over the last 100 years, we've learned about DNA, we've learned about proteomics and genomics, we've learned about interferon, interleukin, we've learned about benign prostatic hyperplasia, we've learned about Alzheimer's disease. None of this did we know about 100 years ago. So the amount of knowledge that has been dumped on the world that we have pulled out of obscurity is phenomenal. Just look at what we've learned in the last 100 years. Well, when the information asymmetry was this and this in 1891, and it's now this and this in 2024, physicians left patients in the dust. And it was kind of a good thing because we want our doctors to know a lot. We want them to know about nuclear magnetic resonance and magnetic resonance imaging and BPH and Alzheimer's disease. We want them to know pathophysiology so they know how to fix it. So as we solve the problem of learning, of solving medical issues, the information asymmetry grew. So again, it was fee for service then, it's fee for service now. I can't tell you how annoyed I get when I go to conferences, health economic conferences, and I hear that fee for service is the worst thing and we need to fix it and we need to go to fee for value. I don't get it. And the number of health economists that are falling for this, that think that fee for service is this boogeyman, and that's why healthcare is expensive, and it just doesn't make any sense to me. I have fee for service at Delta Airlines. I have fee for service at Marriott Hotels. I have fee for service with all of you when I hire you for your service. I have fee for service everywhere. Like McDonald's does fee for service. I mean, they provide me some service, Comcast, AT&T, Verizon, it's all fee for service. I don't know why that's the issue. Now, a health economist would say, well, Nick, the issue is then they have the incentive to do more services. Let's do more heart transplants and let's do more of this. Okay, I get that. And the that leads to another discussion about payment that I hope to be able to get to here in a few minutes about how you can throttle that misincentive to do more unnecessary procedures just to earn some more money. But fee for service isn't the problem. The problem is, I'll jump to the punchline. The problem is a third party payer. Anytime you have a third party paying for stuff, prices are going to go up. So on the left, you have patients. On the right, you have members. Now, on the right, at the hospital, they still call you a patient, but they shouldn't. They should call you a member of some health plan. I don't have my wallet with me, but here's my health insurance card. I pulled it out of my wallet and it's got my membership on it. I'm a member of Aetna. I am a member of United Healthcare. I'm a member of Medicare. And the hospital shouldn't say Nic Anderson, our patient. They should say Nic Anderson, a member of this health insurance company. Let's go treat him according to that health insurance company's policies. Um, and on the left, you had a finite payment amount. Mom and dad over there in the back corner were only able to pay so much. One silver coin and 2 chickens was the most that doctor was able to get from them. And by the way, mom and dad are the payer. That they're not a third party payer, they're the payer. That child belongs to them, they're the payer. On the right, you have practically infinite payment amounts. That hospital on the right can get millions upon millions upon millions of dollars via one solitary patient. If that little kid, I don't know if it's a boy or a girl, if that little kid was on the right side of the screen, that hospital, name your favorite hospital, could lick their chops and go, behind this kid is a huge pool of money. Huge. So much money. Because this kid is part of, let's see, Aetna Health Insurance Company. And last I checked, Aetna had billions of dollars. So here we go. What are we going to do to this kid? Because I can get millions of dollars via that child. So on the left is finite payment amounts. On the right is infinite payment amounts. And if not infinite, infinite enough. So I have 2 points of a thesis. So let me stop right there for a second. In 1891, you called a doctor or whatever. You got on your horse and you went down and you said, "Doc, my kid's sick. Please come." And the doc goes, "Yeah, I'm willing to do this. I kind of know you. You're not very wealthy. You can probably pay me a couple of chickens and a silver coin. Okay, I'll come to your house and help out. Furthermore, I have to see you on Sunday at church. I have to attend PTA meetings with you at the local school. I'm going to see you because we're in a community, a small community, and I don't want to tell you no, okay, I'll come to your house." Fast forward to now, the doctor doesn't know you. The doctor will never see you. Um, there's infinite payment amounts behind you. You're not the payer. You used to be back in 1891. You're not the payer now. There's someone else behind you with really, really, really deep pockets. So how did we get from 1891 to now, from from the living room to the complicated operating room? Well, two ways we came to that. One, as physicians grew in knowledge, the information asymmetry grew to such an extent that it left patients in the dust. Patients then relegated payment to insurance companies because at some point a doctor walked into a room and said, "Hey, I think you need a magnetic resonance image." And the patient said, "I don't know what that is. Sounds technical. I don't know what it is. I don't even know if I need it. I don't know how much it costs. Do I need to go somewhere? Like, what the heck is this MRI thing you're telling me about?" I don't know what year, 1975. And the doctor said, "You got to trust me. Over the last 60 years, this information asymmetry has grown. I'm way up here. You're way down here in terms of knowledge. You need an MRI. You got to just trust me." And the patient went, "All right, if that's what you say I need, I mean, you've left me in the dust intellectually. Okay, when do I schedule the MRI and how much does it cost?" And the doctor said, "It's going to be $3,000." And the patient goes, "I don't have $3,000." And so at some point, the patient said, "I need somebody to pay for this stuff on my behalf." And that's the insurance company. The insurance company goes, "Because of this growth in information asymmetry, and because of the growth in technology and innovation, it's expensive when it first comes out. Cell phones used to be really expensive. They're cheap now. These things typically come down in price unless you have a third party payer. Third party payers do a very good job at keeping things expensive. Um, Again, that's another topic about how that works another day. But payers were hardly better than patients at determining clinical utility in this brave new world. The insurance companies didn't know much more about MRIs than the patients did. Insurance companies are filled with good people trying to pay bills on behalf of patients to to cover medically necessary interventions. They don't know anything about nuclear magnetic resonance, the foundation of MRI. They don't know whether you need that for Lee-Fraumeni syndrome or not. Maybe you need a CAT scan. Maybe you just need an ultrasound. So the insurance companies tried to close that information asymmetry by hiring medical directors and to say, doctor, you're an internist, you know a lot. Why don't you go figure out whether or not what the doctor's saying our member needs, they actually need? Well, an internist in 1975 didn't know all the ins and outs of MRI, but they knew more than the patient. So the information asymmetry was closed when health insurance companies hired medical directors to say, is what the doctor is recommending, terrible sentence, is what the doctor wants on behalf of our member, do they actually need it? And then this doctor, Dr. Jones, comes in and says, let me see the bill. MRI for Lee-Fraumeni, yeah, that sounds appropriate. Let's pay that one. That's an appropriate thing based off of this literature and so on. I learned about that in medical school. MRI for Lee-Fraumeni is an appropriate thing. Let's pay that bill. Next, and another bill comes in, they look at it and say, no, nice try, doctor. We're not paying for that. That's not an intervention I want for my member. The patient belongs to me, not you. And the last thing, more and more information was warehoused in minds, medical libraries, and rounds at the hospital, clinical training. That as physicians grew in knowledge over the last 100 years, where were they warehousing that knowledge? In part in medical journals that nobody could get access to because they're expensive. They're printed. You know, here's one journal I subscribe to. I actually do get the actual paper copy of it. So, but how many people are actually getting this and actually reading these peer-reviewed journal articles? So they were warehousing it in these inaccessible places like medical libraries and all of that, where people, your rank and file person isn't going to go do the research to try to decipher whether or not they need that. So it just solidified the information asymmetry. The second point of my thesis about why this happened and what we did to solve it was the internet. The advent of the internet democratized medical information, and we take it for granted. That how many times do you and I hear people talk about getting enough protein in our diet, or getting, you know, I'm on a low carb diet. It's like 100 years ago, you didn't even know what a carb was. Like the democratization of information. You know, we all now know about melatonin. You know, when you fall asleep, you get melatonin in your body. Melatonin is an antioxidant that helps antioxidize our bodies while we sleep. We take these things for granted, in part because the internet, circa 1994, provided that type of information to us. We now know more about medicine, your average third grade school teacher, than physicians knew 100 years ago. It's in part because of the internet. So let me show you this. This was a paper published in 1997, Transitioning to the Internet, Results of a National Library of Medicine User Survey. They emailed questionnaire to 2,500 users of the National Library of Medicine in 1995. They had an 83% response rate. 70% of them had access to the internet. Of those 70%, 90% had access to the World Wide Web. Those were two different things at the time. However, only 26% with internet access used it to access the NLM. So 26% of 90% of 70% of 83% of 2,500 people, like one guy, was actually using the internet to access the Library of Medicine. To say, I have this new thing called the internet here in my office, here at this medical school. We've paid for a subscription to the National Library of Medicine. I actually use that to go get medical information outside of rounds, published literature printed on paper, and conferences and the like that are really inaccessible. I now have this that's more accessible. In 1990, in 1997, I want to say, June of 1997, Al Gore, if I remember correctly, Al Gore did a big ribbon cutting thing and made the National Library of Medicine for free, gave it out for free, and said, you now don't have to pay for a subscription to it. It's now available to anybody. Just go to pubmed.gov.nlm, whatever it is, and you can have access to this type of stuff, to peer-reviewed evidence, things like this. That that unleashed one of the greatest, biggest influxes of medical knowledge the world's ever seen. It started the internet birthed these progenitors. So here's TTI in the bottom. This is April's company. Many of us know April. PPD, ECRI, University of York. I just published a paper with them. Satara, I'm publishing papers with them right now. The National Institutes for Health and Care Excellence in the UK. All of those companies, and most importantly, that company, ladies and gentlemen, all of those are only possible because of the internet. This entire industry of health technology assessment was only made possible because the internet came about. It wasn't, it was for no other reason. It was an accidental happy accident that the internet enabled people to go, oh, so I can now upload my literature to where it's searchable. You don't have to go down to the community library and go through a card catalog and try to find this particular journal with this particular article in it that said just the right thing that I was looking for to answer, should I or should I not be paying for Barry Smith's new medical device? I mean, how hard is that? It's impossible. I have to drive up to the University of Utah where this card catalog exists. I got to go through the card catalog, find the correct article to say, hey, Barry Smith or Sue Carr or Charlie Sales, your device is worth reimbursing. Thank you for inventing such a great thing. So previous to the internet, medical directors at health insurance companies kind of had to acquiesce to subspecialists and go, yeah, I think what he's doing to our member is the correct thing. Now they don't have to do that. I mean, with these companies, the systematic reviews, the meta-analyses, the synopses of evidence that they're able to create in a couple of weeks, I mean, they can tell you more about the proper therapy for Alzheimer's disease than any 20 neurologists combined. 20 neurologists can't keep in their mind meta-analyses. They certainly can't do them in their mind, but these guys
Nikki,
perform them and publish them.
Nikki,
Yes,
I
please.
could listen to you expound for days. I just love your storytelling, the way you teach. Yuri has to drop off, and I was
Yeah.
going to ask him really quickly. Do you have a quick question that we can kind of have in the parking lot for him to address? It's being recorded. Yuri, if you have something you want to just say really quickly.
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt in the flow of the great
Oracle, yes. When
presentation.
we are all
My
spellbound.
my question is very specific. I'm not sure if it's for the right timing. We are a breast pump manufacturer and seller, and my question is, what are the types of coverages that are available in the US, and what is the way to get in contact with the insurance companies and the DMEs and
Yep.
have our
DME.
pump coverage.
You're definitely DME. I don't know the ins and outs of your device, but
Just to make
breast
sure
pumps are
that
typically
because he's
DME.
in Israel, it might not have the same acronym. DME is,
Durable medical equipment,
yeah.
knee braces, crutches, wheelchairs, oxygen tanks, those things kind of fall under DME. And Yuri, um, one of the fast tracks for DME is to find DME distributor who already distributes breast pumps and say, I have a better one than the one you're currently providing. And hopefully, Yuri, it's less expensive. So the current breast pump's $100, ours is only 95, and we're better. So you beat cost and effectiveness.
Could you
And then
speculate,
that,
Nikki, how many distributors you just described? Are we talking 5,000? Are we talking 200?
no, yeah, even less than 200. I mean, Medline and some of these types. I don't know if Medline's necessarily in that space or DME, but
Mm-hmm.
um, how does a woman currently get a breast pump? Follow that train backward,
Mm-hmm.
and then go cut your competition off at the knees,
Mm-hmm.
and get that DME distributor to stop carrying them and start carrying you.
Does
And then
anyone
you
on the
don't have
call
to
have
worry.
connections to DME distributors?
Sorry.
I'm just asking the room in case somebody has experience and worked directly with DME distributors. Okay, well, we know people among us, just don't happen to be on the call today. But Uri, I gave you Nic's contact information in the chat. If you kindly reply there with your email address, I can follow up with you directly.
Great. Yeah.
Is it
Thanks a
your
lot
birthday?
for. No, it's my wife's.
Okay, well, happy
Yeah.
birthday to her.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today.
So thanks a lot for inviting me. I'll write my email and I'll follow up with Nic, and it was great attending.
Lovely. We do this every
Thank
week.
you.
You're welcome to join anytime.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Nellie, you had something,
thank-
you raised your hand?
So my very first client was a breast pump company 13 years ago. And I don't remember all the DME strategies, but I do remember working with them and configuring the finished goods to make sure we met their requirements and everything.
Mhm.
So, but like I said, that was my very first client.
You have any, you might be helpful for Uri? Should he reach out to you?
He can reach out to me, but what I'd actually probably do is actually funnel him to the actual person who dealt with the DME. So have him reach out, and I can connect him with Dave Paul, who is now doing consulting as well, and he worked directly with the DME, so he may have some coaching back there.
Uri, unless you advise otherwise, I'll just share your email with everyone on the call in case they can be helpful.
Perfect.
Yeah, great. Thanks a lot.
Yes.
All
Happy
right.
birthday.
Thanks a lot, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Okay, goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Joe, for monitoring. I can't see the chats while I'm talking, but
That's okay.
so here's the summary of this. Healthcare we have, I'm speaking from a US perspective, is the natural byproduct of a complex system. And that's typically where I get booed. Nothing in our healthcare system feels natural. It seems like they did this, the theys that do the things that we don't like. It feels like a conspiracy. It's such a nightmare that it feels like they did this. And I argue it's not. I think it is completely natural. And let me give the same example I gave in New York. There's a restaurant in Beverly Hills, California that wants to serve North Atlantic cod because North Atlantic cod is really good, but it's 4,000 miles away. How do you get fresh cod from Norway to Beverly Hills? Well, step one, figure out whatever legal ramifications there are with the EU and the United States.
Technically, step one is catch a fish.
Okay. All right.
I mean, just to
no, because
I know a little bit about this. First, you have to catch a fish.
That step one, that step two,
value.
3, you've got 95 steps to solve before you can get fresh codfish from here to 4,000 miles away in Beverly Hills. You've got to solve 4,000 problems. And if you solve 4,000 problems, you get fresh codfish and you're going to be a millionaire because you're the only guy that took the time and effort to solve 4,000 logistical problems to get a fish from Norway to Beverly Hills. So that's exactly what we did in medicine over the last 100 years. We solved 4,000 problems. We solved what is a protein, what is DNA, what is a single nucleotide polymorphism, what is magnetic resonance imaging. All these problems we solved created a complex system. So one of those books right there is where I'm getting much of this. I've taken that and adapted it to medicine. We just solved problems in medicine. We didn't know what going nuts was. 100 years ago, you lost your mind, you went nuts. Now we know what it is. We know the mental, we know about dementia and neurodegenerative diseases. We know the pathophysiology. We solved problems, which cost time, it cost money, it cost effort, it cost annoyance. It was annoying to solve these problems. All of those things have an economic cost associated with them. And that resulted in an increase in an information asymmetry. Same way you would have an information asymmetry in the codfish shipping industry versus your competition that didn't solve those problems. So again, that's why I think that the healthcare system we have is the natural byproduct of solving a bunch of problems. That we now have these expensive therapies because it costs money to develop the therapies, and who's going to pay for it? The patient couldn't pay for it in that little farmhouse. We started to pay insurance companies and asked them to pay for it on our behalf. They acted as our agent. The system became complex by solving problems. The problem we solved were information asymmetries. This solving caused more complexity. We now have a complex system called healthcare. How do we fix healthcare? Well, as you've heard me say at 10x, we solve it the same way you solve student loans. If you've never heard me say this, you have a hospital and a university, you have a physician and a professor, you have a student and a patient, and you have a student loan, and you have a health insurance company. It's the exact same problem. The problem is a third-party payer. It's not health insurance. It's not health insurance companies, all of they who are out to ruin our lives, driving their Hyundai Elantras. Like I worked at a health insurance company for 7 years. The nicest car out there was probably mine, a 2002 Saturn Ion. Like it's not it's the natural byproduct of having someone else pay your bill. That's what student loans are, and that's what healthcare currently is. So this is the part that probably would have been most beneficial to Yuri before he had to jump off. And some of you have heard me do this. This is chapter 3, showing some of the complexity that we've had to come up with as we've solved medical problems. So just within macular degeneration, there's probably 5 different subtypes. I don't know macular degeneration, so forgive me if I'm off base, but you've got macular degeneration type A, B, C, and D. Well, how do you tell an insurance company A, B, C, and D? In fact, this probably isn't even chapter 5. This is a new book with that as the predicate for this. How did we even come up with this gibberish? I26.9, 02FP3Z0, 37211, blah, blah, blah. How did we come up with that? Well, we came up with it little by little. As insurance companies were saying, Doc, I can't just take your written note on a sheet of paper saying, hey, Nick has macular degeneration. I did these things to him. Please reimburse me $200. Insurance companies can't take sticky notes and one sticky note at a time figure out whether or not they should be paying that bill. So the American Medical Association and CMS and many, many, many groups created these types of languages to very acutely tell an insurance company what a physician did to their member. Have you noticed like how vehement I am on wording it that way? That physicians treat insurance company members. Physicians don't treat their patients. They're in the business in the United States of treating an insurance company's member. And they're supposed to treat that insurance company member according to that insurance company's policy, because when they got credentialed to treat that insurance company's member, they agreed to follow those policies. And if they want to not follow those policies, they need to go get prior authorization. They need to go say, hey, here's what I'm planning on doing to your member. They don't fit within the generic policy you've written. I need a little latitude. And then the insurance company gets to say, okay, I'll give you some latitude. Go ahead and do that unique treatment you're going to do to our member. Or no, I don't want that treatment for our member. They belong to us. They're only willing to pay us so much, and I don't want them to have that. And then the physician says, well, you jerks, you're going to let money get in the way and you're going to do this. And they go, well, okay, if you're so benevolent, why don't you do it and you pay for it? If we're all in the business of helping patients, why don't you just do it and help them? Why are you going to do it and send us the bill? Because if you send us the bill, I got to raise their premium. And $1,000 a month is already a lot. And if I have to go to $1,010 and $1,020 and $1,050, sooner or later, the patient says, why is this rude insurance company raising their insurance premiums? Well, because you wanted all the stuff the doctor told you you needed that the insurance company had already done a health technology assessment on via all those companies I showed earlier, and they didn't want that. They didn't want to pay that for you. So maybe you should find a more liberal health insurance company or something like that that's willing to pay for more things if that's what you want. Which again brings us to a discussion about prepaid medical. Is prepaid medical really what we have in the United States? We don't have health insurance. And maybe that same thing, that same argument goes for foreign countries. So look at this. These are the names of, sorry, when I use my mouse, it flickers. That's what those different codes are. If any of you want to take a picture of that, of this screen, and frame it, this answers a lot of questions I get. Like, Nick, do we need a new CPT code? And I go, why would you need a new CPT code? You probably need a new APC grouper, or something like that. That first one is always a letter, 2 numbers, a decimal, and a number. That's the disease. So by the way, I26.9 is pulmonary embolism without acute cor pulmonale. So if you're treating a patient that's got a PE, but they don't have acute cor pulmonale, you'll write on the bill I26.9. Then, if the patient's treated inpatient, meaning they're in the hospital for 2 midnights, you need to put on the bill 02FP3Z0, which is treating that pulmonary embolism, and the patient was treated in the inpatient setting. The physician can bill 37211. Again, this is always going to be 5 numbers. That's the CPT code, so the doctor can get paid. The HCPCS code is always a letter and 4 numbers. Those are administered by CMS. CMS comes up with the device code. So if you use this device to treat my pulmonary embolism, you want to get reimbursed for this. You had to pay $200 for this thing. So you got to send a bill to the insurance company with a HCPCS code, and you need to send a CPT code because you implanted this in me, and you want to get reimbursed for your professional services and for the device. The DRG is always 3 numbers, and the APC is what you bill in the outpatient setting. It's not really what you bill, it's what you get paid. You get paid a DRG and you get paid an APC. Here is a breakdown, for example, of that particular code. PCS codes are only billed if the patient was treated inpatient. Again, where they're admitted to the hospital for 2 midnights. They have to be in the hospital for that period of time. 0 is the first part of the umbrella. That's medical and surgical. The second part is the body system. 3rd part, 4th part, 5th part, all the way down to specifics about the device. And that PCS code will go to the insurance company, and they'll say, based off that PCS code and based off of the diagnosis code, that ICD-10-CM code, here's the DRG that will pay you. So if the patient comes in with an I26.9 and they're treated with a 02FP3Z0, they'll get paid DRG 166. If the patient's not there for 2 midnights, they'll bill I26.9, they'll bill 37211, and they'll get paid APC 5184. APCs pay this much, DRGs pay this much. It's about 60, an APC pays about 60% of what a DRG does. So you could ask the question, Joe, I don't know if you remember asking me this several months ago. You said, so do hospitals have the incentive to keep you for 2 midnights so that they can get a DRG payment? And I said, perhaps they have that incentive. I don't know that they have that motive. In health economics, we talk all the time about incentives. We don't necessarily talk about motives. I don't know what a doctor's motive is. I can't be in their mind. And frankly, many doctors don't even know this. Like, they don't know that this is how the game is played. This is what you bill, this is what you get paid, and so on. I'll go through these next slides pretty quickly so we can get to any Q&A. So here's the breakout of each of those. So I said the first one is pulmonary M without acute cor pulmonale. That second one, 02FP3Z0, I just showed in the previous slide. The next one is transcatheter thrombolysis. The next one is a guiding catheter. The next one is the DRG for other respiratory system procedures. And the last one is for outpatient procedures, which is a level 4 vascular procedure.
If medical coding is a
Um,
language, how many words are in the vocabulary?
I would say each of these coding languages, ICD-10, CMs, PCS, CPTs, and so on, that's 99% of it. I could add in there RVUs. Maybe that's part of the language, relative value units.
Well, I was saying how many
Each
words are in the language. So how many possible combinations of all of these characters are there? We talking thousands, 10,000s, hundreds of thousands?
millions.
Oh, pardon me.
If you do the permutations and combinations of these, and how many of them are billed wrong, just like a language, I could say,
Yeah, you
I go
can
eat
not conjugate
sandwich,
properly, right?
not conjugate properly, and the hospital bills the wrong set of codes, and the insurance company gives them a $0 check, and they go, oh shoot, it wasn't I26.9, it was I26.8. No wonder we
Mm,
didn't get paid. Oopsies, let me resend this and hopefully I'll get paid. So Joe, it's really like millions. It's
mm.
like there was a thing, I don't know if any of you remember this, in about 2015 they went from ICD-9 to ICD-10,
Yeah.
and the Wall Street Journal was publishing these really funny articles about one of the codes was running into a pole and the next one was running into a pole again. Like it was like that's actually like it was like blunt trauma to the head, and then the next code was like blunt trauma to the head again,
Is this a
and or
joke or was that real?
no, it's real. And it's like they wanted ICD-10 to be much more specific so that when you break this finger, it's billed differently than when you break this
Wow.
finger. So the data we get is more acute. We can really see how many ring fingers are broken versus pinky fingers. And physicians and billing departments were mad about it because they're like, it doesn't matter. We treat this finger the same as we treat this one.
Hmm.
But CMS and others were saying, well, we want the specificity. We want to
Although I do
know.
think that some insurers do treat the middle finger differently. I think that's a thing.
Yeah, I think some med device manufacturers administer that finger differently too.
Nikki, I don't know if you have how
Um,
many more slides, but I do know there's a half dozen questions spooling for you.
okay,
And
let me burn through these and then I'll stop and we can just do questions. So that's what an inpatient bill would look like. You don't get paid for the CM code. You don't get paid for the PCS code. Those are just codes that route you to the correct payment. The doctor would get $381 and the hospital would get 25 grand. By the way, no separate payment for the HCPCS code. So if you're developing a medical device that's principally used inpatient, you may not get paid for it. The hospital has to eat that cost out of the $25,146 they'd get, unless you can get NTAP payment or TPT payment. So the doctor will get $300, the hospital gets 25 grand. In the hospital outpatient department, those codes change, and so do the payments. So the doctor would get 511, the hospital would get 10,000. Notice it like half of what they would get if they treated them inpatient. And then here's what it looks like in the office. The doctor and the office combined get one check. It's $8,300. So if you're a doctor, you'd be like, well, why don't I just treat in the office all the time? Well, because out of that 8,300, you got to pay everybody's salaries and property taxes and utilities. Coverage is one, coding's one thing, coverage is another. I'm going to skip through all of this so we can get to people's questions. Conclusions. We got reimbursement by solving information asymmetries. That the patient got left in the dust when physicians kept growing in knowledge. The patient finally said, I can't keep up with you guys. I don't know what you're talking about. Medicine, I used to be able to keep up with my old country doctor. I can't now. So I need somebody to tell me, do I need what he's giving me? And how the heck am I supposed to pay for it? Well, when we relegated that obligation to make that determination to a health insurance company, we did close the gap, but we made healthcare more expensive because now you got a third party payer. It's the same thing that happened in education. We solved information asymmetries with insurers as the proxy for patients and with the internet. The internet made it possible for health insurance companies to hire people like me to figure out, is this therapy appropriate? And to push back on doctors and hospitals and say, you guys aren't at the top of the food chain anymore. There's plenty of us that can argue with you. There's plenty of us that know clinical utility. and so on. The HTA, health technology assessment industry, was born. Expense expansion isn't unique to medicine. Anytime you have a third-party payer, costs are going to go up. Education is the good example of that. Coding is dependent on setting of care. Coverage requires substantial evidence, and payment is dependent on cost of goods sold, coding constraints. These are some of the slides I skipped over for the sake of time, and I'll end it there. I wanted to just show everybody my view, it's my opinion, of how we got here to what I think all of us would agree is a mess. We have this mess of codes and health economists and CPT, DRG nonsense. But that was the natural byproduct of solving information asymmetries. And now we don't like what we have. So now we can go fix that. How do we solve that? That's another problem to solve. Now that we've solved the information asymmetry problem, now that we've learned so much in the last 100 years and have given ourselves this healthcare system that we have that we don't like, well, let's go solve that. And I have theories about how to solve it relatively pretty easily. But reimbursement came out of the solving of problems. It was a natural consequence. So I'll stop that and we'll get to some quick.
I have some administrative things to do. One is I have to stop at the top of the hour, but I made Nikki co-host. So while I'll drop off, you guys can continue until Nick says I really have somewhere to go. Second is there are 12 weeks until 10X, and I don't know the date. I just don't have it at the tip of my fingers, but assuming you're going to book a room at the Hyatt, you want to do that soon because they'll close the date off, and then you won't be in the preferred discounted rate. So you want to take care of that. I'll put that link in the message box here. And even though, let's see, even though this question is out of order, I am going to play favorites today because our own Susie Carr submitted her 510K this week for her frog, which is a great milestone. Congratulations. And she'll take herself off mute because she has a question about her frogs.
Yes. So I think the answer is the hospital eats that cost. Is that correct, Nick?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
And if the hospital bills for the use of your, if the episode of care was going to pay $10,000 to treat that patient, and they use your device, and your device is $5 of that 10,000, they don't care, and they won't notice it. They really don't care. If it's 3,000 of that 10,000, then you got to go through the value analysis committee. It's got to go through all this bureaucracy to figure out, is it worth it for us to lose 3,000 out of the $10,000 total payment?
Now, Susie,
It would be treated like a tongue depressor.
I'm thinking that your costs are going to be pretty low relative to the overall cost of things. Do you think that Sue needs to really be concerned about reimbursement at all?
No, I don't. I
That's a
think Sue's
blessing.
in that sweet spot where you don't need me.
Okay.
It's good.
Eddie,
But
you
I always need you, Nick.
Eddie,
No, thank
I,
you.
on the other hand, probably need you more than anybody, Nick. But we're getting there.
go ahead.
In fact, actually, offline, I'd like to chat with you because I've got a pre-sub meeting with the FDA at the end of this month.
Okay.
So
And
Awesome.
Ed's going to be our guest of honor in about a month's time. Next week, Larry Stevens is going to talk about what to do when you get a 483. What is a good way to respond and what are not so good ways to respond?
Okay.
But I also
Ed,
just want to highlight
pre-sub's a
to
big
everybody.
deal.
Sorry, Nick.
I was just saying that's great, Ed, that you're there. I mean, that's a big step.
Yeah. Also, I've just put into the chat for everybody, and Nick, I'd love to get your view on it, a link to a podcast by Michael Lewis, which is very on point to this. It's about Athena Health.
Oh.
Is it Michael Lewis as in Liar's Poker, Michael Lewis?
As in Liar's Poker, yeah.
Okay.
It's his podcast called Against the Rules, but there's one episode that's about the guys who came up with Athena Health, and they found a woman who was toiling away in the basement of a hospital who had all these codes in her head. And basically, as you were talking, Nick, I was like, man, I know I've heard this story somewhere.
In the
So-
interest of time,
Ah.
Rick, I'm gonna open the Pandora's box of your verbosity and have you ask your question.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
Yeah, go.
So-
I'm done.
To summarize, I am on a medical share plan, and where, again, to summarize, I pay the doctor cash, and there is a third party who pays me, but I have total choice over who does the care, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So my question to you is, Nick, from your point of view, from the point of view of improving the way that these things are paid for and improving the system, are medical share plans an improvement over Aetna, Blue Cross, traditional insurance plans? And if so, how?
Nikki, I'm gonna
Yeah,
drop off
from
here.
an
It's the top of the hour,
Okay,
and
Joe.
you are the host. See you all next week. Bye,
Thanks.
everyone.
Bye, Joe. Everybody, you can stay on as long as you'd like or drop. You won't hurt my feelings. But Rick, from a personal standpoint, I like the idea of you being the payer, where it's why I like HSAs, that I now have to be careful and thoughtful. People on the public health side of things say it's bad because now you're stingy with your money and you end up getting cancer because you didn't want to go pay the $200 to have something done. But I'd say, well, then that falls on you. That one of the problems with this is, you've heard me say this before, in car insurance, when I behave poorly, they punish me. In health insurance, when I behave poorly, they punish all of you. So if I stay at home and I eat Skittles and Coca-Cola and smoke a pack of cigarettes every day, they raise your premium. In car insurance, I drink like a fish, I drive, I ram it into a telephone pole, they raise my premium the way it should be. But they would say in healthcare, that's discriminatory. It's discrimination to punish Nick for his behavior. Well, that's what health insurance is. It's discrimination. Not in the sense that we use the word typically, but yes, you have to discriminate. You're an alcoholic. You run your car into telephone poles all the time. We're going to charge you 90 grand a month here at Geico. Get your act in order, stop doing that, and we'll lower your premium. In healthcare, you weigh 5,000 pounds, you smoke a carton of cigarettes every day, you drink like a fish, I'm going to raise Rick Stockton's premium. Well, why? Rick didn't do anything. You eat healthy, you exercise. Why? They should raise my premium. And but they don't. So anytime Rick, that your risk share pays you $1,000 a month, and you're then to use that money on your own behalf, you've now sort of got rid of a third party payer and you became the payer. I like it. I like that idea. Again, on the public health standpoint, it could have a different ramification because now you don't spend that money unless the money's made useless to you, unless you can't spend that money on a new pair of shoes. You have to spend it on healthcare. Then you go, okay, I may as well go figure out if I have melanoma and get ahead of this, go have a skin check. But yeah, anytime you close the gap in a third party payer, the better. So if we could have the healthcare we have today, the science that we have today, but the payment we had in 1891, you would have a lot of problems solved.
Yeah.
That
But the
has
only
been
way that
my
we got
experience. Yeah,
yeah,
that has been
the only
my,
way we
that has
got
been
the
my
amazing
experience
medicine
last
we
5
got,
years.
yeah,
Oh,
the
no,
only
I
way
have,
we got the
I have,
amazing
yeah.
medicine we have is by the expense that was able to fund it.
And I literally had this shoulder repaired with about half the tendons severed from an accident and ended up having 100% reimbursement. But I pay for my well checkups.
Yeah.
I do have a question
Barry.
and a statement. I know that a lot of healthcares have wellness plans so that there's incentives for you to stay healthy. But what happens if you do the wellness plan and you stay healthy and you go to Hawaii and you scuba dive and you have an accidental immersion pulmonary edema, which spreads to your heart and you have a heart attack? So you're a healthy person, but you had a heart attack due to an accident, your premium still will go up.
Mhm.
Mine did not.
Yeah, and that's yeah, Sue, like this goes to like a fundamental thing that I probably talked about 2 or 3 years ago, where we don't have health insurance, we have prepaid medical. If you really want to solve the American healthcare problem, the doctor needs to work for the health insurance company, step one. So when you graduate medical school, you go get a job at Aetna Hospital, treating Aetna members according to Aetna medical policies. That's step one. And step two, you may want to consider only paying for things that are appropriate for insurance. So Geico doesn't pay for oil changes, right? I have Geico car insurance. They don't pay for they don't pay for oil changes. Why? Because it's not fit for insurance. It's a foreseeable event. Every 3,000 miles, I see my odometer go up to 3,000. I go get my oil changed. If I don't, my engine burns up and it's on me to go buy a new car. So they don't pay for oil changes. They don't pay for windshield wiper blades. They don't pay for new tires. They don't pay for any of that stuff. That's on you. And thank goodness. Because can you imagine how expensive an oil change would be if Geico paid for it? Because now all of a sudden, what is it? Jiffy Lube would charge $2,500 for an oil change, because they know that behind you is a wealthy auto insurance company that pays $2,500 for oil changes. So it's a good thing we pay for that. Well, also, this in medicine, why is it health insurance paying for prostate exams? You scheduled a prostate exam, a mammogram, a colonoscopy. So now all my health economist friends would say, Nic, what kind of health economist are you? If they pay for a prostate exam, that's cheaper than paying for the prostate cancer. And you go, well, then when do we stop? Then doesn't this just keep, why doesn't my health insurance company pay for my organic leafy green salad? Why don't they pay for my vacation? Because there's evidence that vacations are good for your mental health, that drop your blood pressure. Don't we want a decrease in population blood pressure? Why doesn't Aetna pay for my trip to Bora Bora every year? Right? At what point does it stop? If we have health insurance, it needs to be insurance. It needs to be for unforeseeable events. And then my health insurance company would come to me and say, hey, Nic, we see that it's been quite a while since you've had a colonoscopy. You're due for one. If you don't have one and you wake up with colon cancer, we ain't paying for it. So just like Geico says to me, Nic, your tires are going bald. If you slam your car into a pole, we shouldn't have to pay for that was your problem. You didn't get tires changed. Now they don't do that. They should. So insurance is supposed to be a risk adjustment for unforeseen events, but health insurance pays for it for everything. They pay for wellness checkups. They pay for colonoscopies, mammograms, prostate exams. They pay for all sorts of prophylactic things that I go, why are you guys doing this? That you should only be paying for the unforeseeable. I should be paying for the foreseeable. And if I do, then you should lower my premium, because you're not going to have to pay for so many of the unforeseeables. So Sue, it's a problem if you go scuba diving and then, you have some accident, a true accident. You had a heart attack. How would anybody have known? That your health insurance company should look back and say, Sue did all the right things because we did a wellness checkup on her every 6 months. Pay the bill for her heart attack, and frankly, cut her premium because she's the ideal member on the health plan. So Barry, sorry, I've seen your hand up.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. Nice job. Great information today. Really appreciate it. Two-part question. You talked about the contract between kind of the physician and the insurance company in terms of them providing care under that contract. Why is it then that certainly in my family and family members that you're always fighting, you go to the dentist and you get the bill and they did things that aren't covered by the insurance company. And that's fine when you're at the dentist. It might be a couple $100 and you get annoyed, but I've had family members
Heart transplant.
significant, Guillain-Barré syndrome, right? And they're doing treatments that are known to help. And yet, at the end of that, there's hundreds of thousands of dollars that are not reimbursed, but yet that family member is back up walking around and starting to live a normal life. And then maybe the second part of that question is, why then is kind of the outcomes-based model, your thoughts, maybe expand on that, because it seems counterintuitive to something like that, where there's a treatment that clearly is known to help, but yet it's not reimbursed based on outcomes and in care.
Yeah, good question. And this is the root of it. I mean, this is however long we've been, an hour now. This is the root of this, is that when you graduated medical school and you got a job at St. John's Hospital, and I always joke, like, of course they named the hospital after an apostle to throw you off the scent. What we do here is just, we only do, the right thing. That you go get a job at St. John's Hospital, and your new title is insurance company money extractor. So we call you doctor, but I'm gonna say the health economic incentive is for you to get money from that insurance company. Barry, if you want to be the chief of OBGYN here at this hospital, you better learn real quick how to get money from that insurance company and that one down the street.
Right.
And the more of their money you can get, we'll consider some things. That I purposely say it like this.
No,
I'm
understood.
purposely being obtuse. I'm trying to paint a point, and I am confusing incentives and motives, and I shouldn't, because the incentive is for you to get as much money from those insurance companies you can every time an ambulance pulls up here at St. John's Hospital. Your motive couldn't be further from that. You're a good person. You're going to do precisely what that patient needs and nothing more. If that's what it takes to become the department chief or something, then count me out. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do precisely what needs to be done for that patient when they show up. Be damned what, I could get an extra $30,000 for the hospital if I did these extra things. Well, when the dentist is working on your mouth, they're not thinking necessarily about all of the billing codes that they're going to have to send to your insurance company to get reimbursed for the cavities and fillings that they treated. So they're going to throw spaghetti at the wall and see what the insurance company reimburses. And the insurance company is going to say, for a cavity, we pay for a filling or a crown or a root canal. That's it. Like one of those three things or a combination of them or whatever. And you should know that, dentist. Why did you just bill us for 25 different things? Well, in the middle of that is the poor patient who doesn't know anything. What are they supposed to know about billing codes? And the patient's like, laying there with their mouth open. And they end up getting stuck with some bill because, frankly, the dentist did more than they should have. The dentist didn't look at your health insurance policy to say, can I do a crown and a filling? Can I do a da-da-da, or da, whatever combination? By the way, here's our 3-year-old at the dentist the other day. It was her first time going and she knew exactly what to do. That she just sat down and opened her mouth. But yeah, the poor patient doesn't know. And so they end up getting a $500 bill going, well, my insurance company is the bad guy. They should have paid this whole thing because I know my dentist. My dentist is my next door neighbor. He's my best friend. Actually, my dentist is. And, my dentist would never offend me. Why would my dentist is the good guy. The insurance company's the poo-poo caca. And I go, you get rid of all that when the dentist is the insurance company. So if I went to Aetna Dental, then everything they do to me is covered. And if it's not, then it's their problem. I paid them my monthly premium and they treat me.
Right.
And there is no prior authorization.
Right. You would seem like there's a link now today where the dentist could actually real time know the patient's insurance, know the procedure they were doing, and go, I'm going to do an extra set of, bite x-rays, right? That your insurance isn't going to cover, and know that kind of real time versus, this delayed effect of you know, you get the bill and, oh, we didn't cover that, but we did that because it's under our standard of care, right? That's what you know, the
Well,
old.
this is going on the internet, so maybe somebody's going to take this and run with it. But there's another use for medical VR. Right in front of you is the patient and their health insurance company, and all like coming up on your screen as you're in their mouth are all the things you can do to them that will get reimbursed.
Right.
Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Joe, edit this before
Before
that
it
goes
goes
out.
out, exactly. We have a
There's a
medical
little-
we have a software as a service device here.
Yeah, that there's everything that will get reimbursed. So for example, when you do a peripheral vascular procedure, Medicare won't pay separately for intravascular ultrasound, which is a catheter that goes through the artery and then looks around, just ultrasound, and says, put the stent here, don't put the stent here. Medicare doesn't pay separately for IVUS. And it drives interventional radiologists crazy because they're like, I need to put the stent in Nick's leg here. I don't want to put it here. And the only way for me to do that is to use IVUS. So to get the best outcome for your member, I need to use IVUS. And Medicare says, no, we're not going to pay for IVUS. We'll pay you the $10,000 for doing the procedure. We're not going to pay you $10,000 plus $1,000 for the IVUS. Well, what if you had a patient in front of you and right in front of your eyes, literally, were all of the procedures you could do and get paid for? And then you leave it to the physician to determine, do I want to do all those? Are they medically necessary or not? You know, hey, there's a little company.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Ed.
Yeah, I had two things that maybe will help you the next time you give this, because it's a great speech. Looking at insurance companies in other areas. So historically, in London, insurance companies owned fire departments, but they had to give that up. The reason is the fire departments, if your house is on fire and all the houses in London are in rows, they would literally only put out the fire in the house that was insured. That was not the right way because the fire spreads. So the city realized, no. We have to own the fire department. And wherever the fire is, we put it all out. And then you deal with the insurance companies later. On the flip side, in the UK, they didn't used to have pet insurance. And it's literally since I've lived in this country that pet insurance came along. And when pet insurance didn't exist, it was much more of the type of thing that you describe. You could probably find data on this in the past sort of 20, 25 years, where procedures have all gone through the roof because of exactly what you're describing, of this dissociating who the payer is. And now I used to have pet insurance, but now I don't because it's a ridiculous thing. But anyway, it really has just skyrocketed all the prices of healthcare for your pet.
How much would neutering be in 1995? Well, $20, you know, and takes two, and now it's 400, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Those sorts of things. But also the numbers of things like MRIs that you would do on your pet. When back in the day, you'd look at your pet and you go, this dog has big growths, it's cancer, we will put the dog down. Now there are all these procedures that can be done. They don't think about should they be done, because the pet doesn't, the dog doesn't understand what's going on to them, you know. Anyway, but the other thing, the last thing I'll say is some of what you're describing I absolutely get, because like Kaiser Permanente, you keep talking about Aetna. Kaiser, I grew up in the US and they have exactly that model where you have to go to the Kaiser hospitals. Kaiser pays all the docs and so on and so forth. But that fundamentally at a microcosm is kind of like, although the NHS in this country I'm a huge fan of, it's highly inefficient now because it's grown with some of these things. But those are quite similar systems.
Yeah, the IDNs, you know, I worked for Intermountain, which is an integrated delivery network, and Kaiser and Geisinger. And when I lecture at UCSF every year, every November, Kaiser comes up and Joanne Spetz, that runs the program, always intervenes. And she says, guys, I can tell you about Kaiser. I'm a health economist here at UCSF. Let me tell you about Kaiser. I know Kaiser really well. And she gives another view of it. and I'll spare the view because I don't know if it's confidential or whatever, but her point is kind of what I said at the top of the call, that IDNs are trying to be this, where the physician works for the health insurance company. It's integrated. But in so many regards, when I was at Intermountain, I was in the Select Health building, which is our health insurance company. And I still have some Select Health swag hanging around here, that I looked out my window, literally where my desk was. I looked out the window and there's Intermountain Healthcare, the big 15-story hospital in Salt Lake City. And I know exactly what their job is. Their job is to get my money. And there was no ill-conceived notion that it was otherwise. That that hospital looks out their windows at Select Health and licks their chops and goes, those sons of guns do $2 billion a year in revenue. When I was there, we did like 2.2 billion, and $2 billion in revenue. I want that money. How do I get that money? And the same thing goes with auto body repair. You open up an auto body repair shop because somewhere there's a Geico, Progressive, State Farm, Farmers Insurance Company that has a lot of money, and you want it. So you got to get credentialed with them to get that cash. And so IDNs try to solve that by saying, guys, we're part of the same family. You're Kaiser Insurance, we're Kaiser Hospitals, let's get along. But all it really is a contracting negotiation that says, you agree to play nice with us, we agree to play nicer with you, then we will play with the other guys. And the only way to do it is really, in my opinion, is the only way to really solve this is that when a physician graduates medical school, they go get a job at a health insurance company hospital, a thing that doesn't exist, a health insurance company hospital. We can come up with some acronym. And I go to Aetna hospitals, Rick Stockton goes to Cigna hospitals, Ed Capabianca goes to Blue Cross Blue Shield hospitals, so on and so forth. And why would you go to a different one? You're not part of them. I go to Vasa Gym. I don't go to Gold's Gym. They would look at me and be like, why are you here? I'm like, oh yeah, good point. I'll go to the appropriate gym that gives me the equipment I paid for, the services I paid for. If I wanted Gold's Gym, I would have signed up for Gold's Gym. They're $500 more a year, but they get massage, and they get, this and this. That it's all the benefits of the NHS with just more options. And frankly, Medicare patients would go to Medicare hospitals, and VA patients go to VA hospitals where their insurance is. And I want to pay a little extra, so I'm going to go to Cigna because they're the really good one. And so isn't willing to pay the extra. They just want basic, I broke my arm stuff. Well, they'll go to Aetna. And now you don't have this insurance company money extraction game whereby you need CPT codes and DRGs and all this stuff so that you can most acutely get that money from those payers. So, sorry, Mark.
I just wanted to continue the dialogue in this way, and I really appreciated Ed's insight on the fire insurance issue. That's incredible. I'm very interested in that. But one of the problems is that we have, and I put in my note that we have a fourth stage, and the employers have found their way into this system. And it is only, I would say, a historical error that should never have happened.
World
and
War
they
II.
shouldn't have ever been involved. And it's creating this not only third party, but fourth party. And because the fourth party is corporations, they have the healthiest population and the most leverage in the economy. And so they have moved the whole scheme over because they certainly don't want to be penalized by their employees. It's a no-win situation for employers.
Yeah.
And they should be volunteering to get out of it. And we could change that with an IRS interpretation. All it would take would be the IRS would say all income payments for your health insurance for employees is a income.
Yeah.
Once it's income, then employees will take that money and they will find a better way. I do
They'll have
think that.
purchasing power.
They will have the purchasing power. You don't have to dismantle anything, because eventually they will just push the payers, because they have the agency. But right now, they feel powerless because they don't have a negotiation with the insurance company either. Although,
Can I tell you something interesting? Oh, sorry,
so
Mark.
I
Go
was
ahead.
just going to say, just kind of close on this, is most of our major employment disputes and union disputes in the last 20 years have been related to healthcare, including the Mayo Clinic and their nurses.
Yeah. You know, I just got this email. I'll read this to you real quick. If I could flip it around, it's just a PDF on this computer screen. I have 3 right here. I think you can only see one of them. There's my laptop screen, and then this one. I just got this 20 minutes before this webinar started from a colleague of mine, and her email title was lawsuit. And I was like, oh crap, what'd I do? like, guys, can I tell you, when you send an email, like put like need a little context there, you know. But right here, it's the actual court filing in a lawsuit of the United States against some physicians. And it says, plaintiff alleges that in February, so-and-so began instructing nurses to note non-existent comorbidities in patients' charts and to classify the patients as having major complication and comorbidities when they did not. The false diagnosis of MCCs facilitated the plan to bill Medicare at a higher reimbursement rate for those patients. So a product that I know well has, you get this DRG for major complication and comorbidity, this one for complication and comorbidity, and this one for nothing, just garden variety. This one's like $20,000, $10,000, $5,000. So you have the incentive to get these major complication comorbidity patients because they pay so much. Now, in theory, they also cost more to treat because they're train wrecks. But I did a data analysis thing, and I found that, like, isn't it weird that the major complication and comorbidity DRG is the most frequently paid? Because if it's major, isn't that the English language, as I understand it, when you're looking at a Gaussian distribution, major should be up here, minor should be down here, and average should be what's most commonly paid. I mean, if everyone in America is a genius, we need to redefine genius. You know, it should only be this, and the outliers are geniuses, or
Lake Wobegon, where
intellectually
all the
disabled.
children are slightly above average.
Yes, yes, yes. So I've always said this on these
I'm
phone
from
calls. I'm
Minnesota,
like,
so
yeah, but it's interesting because I've been saying it. My intuition has looked at this and been like, I kind of think there's some doctors that are like, yeah, you know, this guy had a major complication of comorbidity. Nurse, write that in the notes. Well, sure enough, here's the United States against these doctors who instructed nurses to note non-existent comorbidities to bill Medicare at a higher reimbursement rate. So that is the game. The game is graduate medical school so that you can be a well-paid insurance company money extractor. That's the incentive. Again, I want to make that so clear. I'm not demonizing physicians or physical therapists or occupational therapists. I'm saying that's the incentive that exists for them, if not the motive. That I don't think doctors are waking up every morning trying to, you know, figure out some way to get some extra money. But the incentive is that way. And that's not their fault. They didn't set up that incentive. It's a natural byproduct of the system we have. That goes away the minute the doctor is the insurance company. I think universities would be much slower to issue degree programs for diplomas that they know will never result in a job. You know how many dumb university programs there are? Like ridiculous programs that you're like, what are you going to do with that diploma when you're done? You're like, I don't know. I'll figure it out when I get there. But boy, do I enjoy studying this. Well, why does the university offer that program? Because it ain't their money. They're going to suck that insurance, that student loan money from the students. And it's the student's problem to pay back the student loan. It's not our problem. That's why universities have to be these big. I remember one university had boasted the world's largest student hot tub. And you're like, where are you getting the money for that? Like, no, $500 a semester would never fund that. $40,000 a semester will fund that, or whatever, you know, $2,000 will fund that. And it's because the university doesn't care. It ain't their problem. That those ridiculous programs would evaporate. Those programs would evaporate if there was no such thing as a student loan, and the student actually had to fund their education off of the income they earned during the summertime, which would be negligible because all they have is a high school diploma. How much money can they actually earn? So anytime you get a third party payer, you get all these misaligned incentives to get money from somebody. So anyway, thanks everyone.
My daughter is is actually on the committee. She's an elected official in Finland that oversees their medical system in that district. And it's a new entity. And she's engaged in this process right now. So
Interesting.
But we don't have an equivalent. But it's like they're NHS, but it's overseeing in their district. So this is what we need, but those voices need to be made. So thanks, Nic.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Thanks. That was great.
Thank you. Bye-bye.